We're here at Lawn Road Flats in Lawn Road in Hampstead in northwest London. And this is where Agatha Christie came to live in 1941. The Lawn Road Flats were really an extraordinary creation and was really the brainchild of three people, Jack and Molly Pritchard, who were the clients who developed this plot of land, which they'd acquired in 1929, and the Canadian architect Wells Coates. And it really was an experiment in new ways of living, more economical, more compact, more stylish, without all the clutter and complication of typical Victorian and Edwardian dwellings, many of which, of course, lined either side of Lawn Road, which simply exaggerated the extraordinary contrast of this building with its neighbours. The building was opened in 1934, and it was very successful. By 1937, part of the building on the ground floor was converted to a thing called the Isokon, and this became the go-to bar and restaurant for many of the creative spirits, intellectuals and artists who lived in the area, including such as Barbara Hepworth and Henry Moore, as well as the three Bauhaus masters who came to live in the building in the mid-30s, that's to say Walter Gropius, Marcel Breuer and Laszlo Moholy-Nagy. After the war, one could say it began to decline slowly. Jack and Molly lived here until 1969. They sold the building in that year to the New Statesman newspaper, who had it for 2 or 3 years before selling it to the London Borough of Camden. And by the late 1990s, the building was in considerable disrepair. A project that was launched in 2001, which I was proud to lead for the architect, recreated the building in its original form, rescued it from this state of near dereliction, and reopened the building in 2004. And the place we're standing in now is actually the Isokon Gallery, which was created in the garage and opened in 2014. And this is here really to tell some of the extraordinary stories that spin out of this remarkable building.
In 1940, Jack Pritchard had the canny idea of marketing the flats as the safest building in London with its reinforced concrete structure. Jack Pritchard painted this building dark brown so it couldn't be spotted from the air. He put an ad in the Times newspaper boasting that the ISO Bar was a private club with its own private air raid shelter. He had a flood of applicants, one of whom was Agatha Christie and her husband, Max Mallowan. It's likely that the couple were introduced to the building by an old friend of Mallowan's, the Egyptologist Professor Stephen Glanville, who had worked with Mallowan on digs in Egypt, and he'd also advised Agatha Christie on several of her books set in Egypt, including Death on the Nile and Akhenaten. Agatha Christie did have an extensive property portfolio, but her house in Sheffield Terrace had been damaged in the Blitz, and her country house, Greenways in Devon, had been requisitioned by the Admiralty. In March 1941, the couple moved into flat number 22, and the following May, when Max was moved by the Air Ministry to Cairo, Christie moved into one of the classic minimalist apartments, number 17, which was just like this one. Surprisingly, Hampstead was targeted during the Blitz. During the air raids of the Blitz, Christie would retire to her bed with a pillow over her face to protect her from flying glass. And on a table beside her bed, she had her two most precious possessions, her fur coat and her hot water bottle. Thus, she wrote, she was ready for any emergency. It was the first time since the couple had been married that they had lived apart. Christie wrote to Max that she liked to lie back in that funny old chair, which looks so peculiar, but which is actually very comfortable. She would close her eyes and think, now, where shall I go to with Max? Often it is Leptis Magna or Delphi, or up the mound at Nineveh. It was in the confines of this tiny flat that Agatha Christie entered one of her most prolific periods. During the day, she worked in the dispensary at University College Hospital, and at night she would return here to this little flat and sometimes work at 2 novels at the same time. One of the big attractions about living in this building was the incredible community of international artists and writers and intellectuals, many of them left-wing and communist. They socialised here, they met on the staircases, and there was a wonderful exchange of ideas. It was a bit like living in an intellectual telephone exchange. There was also an infamous network of Soviet spies. On the ground floor in flat number 1 lived Arnold Deutsch, and he's the man who recruited the Cambridge Five. Max Mallowan returned from Egypt in May 1945, and the couple stayed on in the Lawn Road flats, even though their other homes became available, until 1947. They knocked into the next flat, a special dispensation from Jack Pritchard, and so they had 2 minimal flats together, flats number 16 and flat 17. The couple's warm affection for their time in Lawn Road was revealed in a letter Christie wrote to her husband. How odd to think that as I pass a funny old building like a liner, I shall always look up at it and say to myself, I was happy there. Oh darling, I did have so much happiness there with you.
For more stories about the Isokon and some of its famous residents, visit the Isokon Gallery in Lawn Road, London NW3. Our special display on Agatha Christie opens on the 6th of March 2021, so please check our website for details.